The Chicago Bulls could potentially lose both their centers on the roster this offseason in Nikola Vucevic and Andre Drummond. I'm going to talk about two options that the Bulls could pivot to if one or both these players do leave in free agency. We're going to talk about that. Plus, it's Saturday, so we're diving into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans, welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Hayes. If you want to follow me right off the top, you can do so at CEO Hayes. If you want to follow the show, you can do so at Bulls Central Pod. But let's get into it. So we know that the Bulls could potentially lose Andre Drummond and Nikola Vucevic this offseason. Andre Drummond, who does have a player option of $3.3 million going into next season, could opt out to either re-sign with the Chicago Bulls at more money and maybe more years, or look to move on to a team that may better utilize him than what Billy Donovan utilized him this last season. Now, Nikola Vucevic is also an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And while there's been more speculation than not, then Vooch is probably more likely to stay in Chicago, just looking at the free agent market, looking at Chicago's needs as well, I think he's likely to stay. But we could lose one, if not both of them, which would leave the Bulls completely thin at a position they were already thin at. No other options on this roster. Marko Simonovic is still on the roster, but I think we all have come to the realization that Marko probably just does not factor into the Bulls' long-term plans. So the first one that I'm going to bring up is if Andre Drummond leaves, but Nikola Vucevic does stay, should the Bulls pivot towards Mo Bamba? Now, Mo Bamba, who the season before this most recent season had his best year. His last full year in Orlando, he played 71 games. He averaged 10 points per game, 1.2 assists, 1.7 blocks per game, and then almost 6 rebounds coming off the bench for the Orlando Magic in that season. I guess he started more. He started 69 out of 71 games, but he played in that season only 17 minutes. 25 minutes he played in that season, that last full season with Orlando. He re-signed with Orlando after they rescinded his rights, right? And didn't have his bird rights anymore, but they still end up re-signing him on a $10.5 million deal with a team option in that second year. They eventually traded him to the Los Angeles Lakers. He only ends up playing 9 total games for the Lakers after being traded there. So when you look at Mo Bamba, considering the Lakers have a team option on him, I think it's likely that they do not, bring him back. They do opt out of that deal so they can then go in and try to do some things in free agency. There's already the rumors that they could try to go after Kyrie. If they don't get Kyrie, they could pivot to other players. But I don't think Mo Bamba factors into the Los Angeles Lakers' long-term plans, and I do think he could be available out there. Now, the biggest question is he going to be willing to sign for less money? The Bulls do have their full mid-level exception that they could use. Considering Mo Bamba off the bench, especially if Andre Drummond does leave, brings that rebounding, brings some shot blocking, and he has a higher scoring ceiling than what Andre Drummond does. Mo Bamba can play next to Vooch, I think. He can play next to Patrick Williams if they continue to play Pat at the 4. I like what Mo Bamba could potentially bring to this team as a friendly deal potentially if they do lose Andre Drummond. Does he replace everything that Drummond does one for one? No, but some people may say he even brings more than Andre Drummond does just because of that shooting upside that Mo Bamba has. Mo Bamba was a target that a lot of Bulls fans were hoping that the Bulls were going to go after last season before it came out that we weren't going to use our full mid-level exception in avoidance of the luxury tax. This year, in free agency, we could potentially give him that full mid-level exception while still avoiding the luxury tax. So maybe it increases the possibility of bringing Mo Bamba into this team. While I am not as high, and I see some Bulls fans that think that Mo Bamba could step in and be a replacement level starter for Nikola Vucevic, I'm not necessarily that high on him, but I'm not low on him either. Still 24 years old, fits the Bulls timeline. The biggest question is, do the Bulls want to go another young player that is still proving some things on the league, or would they want to go a more veteran presence, a more known commodity maybe? But Mo Bamba is absolutely an option. Like I said, I have him more penciled in as a backup option. But you guys may look at him and say, no, this is a guy that we can go after if Vooch does leave, maybe be our starter, maybe just push some things up there. Let me know what you guys think on Mo Bamba. The next player that I'm going to bring up is Christian Wood. Now, Christian Wood's scenario is kind of murky just like Mo Bamba's. When you look at Right now, he has a option on that contract, which I think would pay him $17 million per year. But again, as the Dallas Mavericks look to potentially add defense around Luka and Kyrie, if they do maintain Kyrie, I think the Mavs may be put in a situation to where they do have to decide. Is it going to be us bringing back Kyrie if he wants to come back here? And then maybe we have to let a player like Christian Wood walk so that we can add some needed defense around Christian Wood. Now, I do think Christian Wood, even though he was willing to come off the bench for the Dallas Mavericks, may be more of a starter level potential signing there for the Bulls. But again, you never know. It's expected right now that he could be signed for, again, the full mid-level exception, the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which will net him about $12 million per year. Now, the Bulls will have a full MLE. Could they potentially use that for a Christian Wood? There's a lot of potential there. But one outside scenario, and shout out to Ricky Fontaine who brought this in. That's my dude. He texted me the other day, and I was like, hey, you know what? I can actually see this happening. While this is not the defense that I necessarily think the Dallas Mavericks may go after, but could you issue a double sign and trade for Christian Wood and Nikola Vucevic? Double sign and trades are rare in the NBA, but they do happen. There is a possibility of them happening. And considering both teams would be motivated maybe to get it done, maybe the Dallas Mavericks do want to add a player that Luka is familiar with in Nikola Vucevic to that team and hope that they can play together. And, so they may be able to, you scratch my back, I scratch yours type thing on a double sign and trade. Potential. Let me know what you guys think on those two potential targets for the Chicago Bulls. If one or both of our centers do leave this season in free agency, let me know what you guys think on all that down below. But all right, let's go ahead and get into the mailbag portion of today's episode. This first voicemail, this one's from Big O.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, it's your boy Big O again, man. Something just crossed my mind, so I have to call you back a third time real quick. You talk about it all the time. I talk about it with my people. Man, a lot of what's wrong with the Bulls is coaching. So it's hard to fully assess, if this group is maxed out, or is we maxed out with DeMar DeRozan? Is we maxed out with Zach LaVine? It's hard to tell that when you look at the coaching and the mistakes. And granted, Billy's not a terrible coach, but I don't think he's the right coach for this particular group. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to really say who maxed out or what's maxed out without knowing what a Tom Thibodeau would be able to do with this group. But whether a Greg Popovich or some of the other elite coaches around the league, it's hard to say that Udoka, my man's at OKC or the guy in Utah, Will Hardy. It's hard to tell what a different style of offense, what a different philosophy would do to this group. You know what I mean? And one thing I harped on, you missed Rondo for the last year and a half. I want to see Patrick Williams play a little bit. I wouldn't say point guard, but at least, have more responsibility with ball handling. We seen Toronto do it with Scotty Barnes, with Fred VanVleet, Siakam taking a chunk of the shot. They say, hey, we're going to make sure you're involved and let you initiate the offense. I don't see why Patrick Williams could be more involved that way. I know it's an old style offense, but you got Boot, DeMar, and Zach, and Patrick Williams. Why not try using some type of form of a triangle offense to make sure that ball is popping around and the ball and it's getting in the right hands at the right time in the right place. I don't know. To me, it just seems like Billy could have done more. So it's hard for me, especially, when I hear fans say what's maxed out or what's maxed out, when I honestly believe that this team can get more. Be a championship team, no, but can be competitive like the Knicks. I truly believe so with a few changes here and there and a better social philosophy. So, I just wanted to, because I know I didn't mention that in the last report. So, that's the really biggest thing for me. And so it's going to be hard to really fully assess the Bulls teams going forward all together unless something, they get the right players in here that just start to click with Billy Donaldson. The biggest problem could be the coach instead of the players. But thanks for listening to me, man. And talk to you.
Big O brings a great point that it's hard to assess this team with the level of coaching that we've had. And I completely agree with that. I think that when you look at some of the issues with Billy Donovan, is he a terrible coach? No. I know that we feel like that here in Chicago, and rightfully so for anybody who does feel like that because, he doesn't use players to their best ability. He doesn't use players to grow their skill. Billy Donovan, the lack of adjustments, he does a lot of things that are questionable. And I don't know if he's the best to get out of this roster. So that is a great point from Big O, saying that it's really hard to assess this team. It's really hard to assess what the ceiling of this team would be with better coaching. But here's what I'll say with that. Billy Donovan isn't leaving. So, yes, while it would be easier to assess maybe this team with better coaching that can get more out of players, that has better development plans, it's not happening. So we can still evaluate the ceiling of this team, because one of the things that we know for sure is that Billy Donovan isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So did I just say that like William Shatner? Those weird pauses that was strange. That was real strange. But nonetheless, yeah. So I look at it. You guys know I try not to stay in the woulda, coulda, shoulda. I have my times of that, and I think every Bulls fan does, especially when you've watched this team night in and night out like I've had. But Billy Donovan isn't leaving. So the way that we need to assess this team is with Billy Donovan as the coach, because Billy Donovan isn't leaving as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. And while, yes, I would love to see what a more tactician, an X's and O coach, how they would stagger minutes between Zach LaVine and use Patrick Williams as a point forward. I would love to see all that. But we don't have a coach that is going to do that. And that is why I asked the question over on Locked On early last week. Like, all right, do we even trust Billy Donovan to evolve this offense enough and make the necessary changes to where we see a different result? And I think that that's a valid question to ask. And, ultimately, your point on Patrick Williams being the point forward and how when he does have the ball in his hands and he's allowed to do those things, he becomes more engaged. I absolutely agree with you. But even when Pat did move to the bench, we didn't see a lot of it. Now, we didn't see that because Kobe White, most things went through him, and he deserved that role. And if he does move into the starting lineup, as some people expect, could we then maybe see a difference in that? Something to be said there as well. So, ultimately, I hope that this team evolves and changes in whatever ways are needed. And if they do, hey, the sky's the limit. But let's hope that we see another player, hopefully a Patrick Williams or a Dalen Terry, take a necessary step, if not a leap, for the Bulls' development and for us to be better overall as a team next season. Let's get into this next voicemail for today. This one's from Steph.
Yo, this is Steph, and I'm going to make this real brief because I know I don't have a lot of time. I just watched some information saying that folks were seeing the potential of Dillon Brooks coming to the Bulls. Hell no. And quite frankly, there's no place for him on this team because, again, when you're trying to build a championship team, not only do you need the right personnel, but you need the right personalities as well to build that championship team. And to be quite frankly, if I can kind of piggyback with the Draymond Green situation, he's a great player defensively, yada, yada, yada. But if I was a teammate of his and you took a swing on me, whatever, connected, I wouldn't even feel comfortable with playing with this person, let alone being around you. So that's how I feel about the Draymond Green situation. Now back to the Dillon Brooks. There's no way in the world the Bulls should even make an attempt to get this guy at all. Leave him in Memphis. If he's going to stay there, wherever else he decides to go, let him be. And as far as the questions on whether DeMar, Levine, Vooch, Kobe going to be here, listen, I don't know what it's going to take for the Bulls to get back to those deep playoff / championship years, but I just don't have an answer. It's just going to be the bringing of certain players and to fill that need and to fill those pieces that the Bulls are lacking for some reason, and that's just my take on it.
All right, Steph says there's no place for Dillon Brooks on this team. I agree, and like I said before, it's not that Dillon Brooks to me he's not a bad basketball player. He's not. He's a bad man, probably like a bad person, like in that fake villain role and all that. Like I think Dillon Brooks is somebody who, if they humble themselves, can absolutely be an asset as a rotation player to most teams. But right now, considering where this team is, considering we lack leadership, now that Patrick Beverley isn't for sure going to be on this team anymore, because of all of that, you don't really want to introduce Dillon Brooks into that situation. I just wouldn't, right? And like I said before, while Dillon Brooks puts up some solid numbers, especially as a rotation guy, right? Because that's really just what he is. He's a rotation player, and that's fine, right? Rotation players can get paid a lot and can be huge for teams at points in time. But when you look at it, he doesn't have the high basketball IQ. He's not a solid passer. His defensive numbers for somebody who's known as a defensive guy aren't that great. They just aren't. They aren't that great. And again, this is not to say he's not bad defensively. I would not say that at all. But when you factor in the character concerns of it, you just don't want to introduce that to the team, in my opinion. I know some fans are like, hey, we need as much talent as we can get. We need some tough guys. But I can tell you what, there's a lot of tough, bad basketball players. And while Dillon Brooks isn't bad, you don't want to add somebody who could potentially have a negative impact on the little bit of culture that you are trying to build here. So, that's kind of my thoughts on this, Steph. I know some people share a difference of opinion, and that's fine because, like I said, I can understand people talking themselves into it because Dillon Brooks is not a terrible basketball player. But I do think that you can get the production of Dillon Brooks with less character concerns throughout the league and probably for less money as well. You guys can let me know what you think on that one down below as well. Let's get into this next voicemail. This one's from DK. Hopefully not DK Oldies because that's a terrible company.
Yo, what's good, Hayes? It's DK. Yeah, back with me with the okay take. But let me say this first. I think everybody can agree with me. I don't like Jerry. If I ever catch Jerry, he catching the meaner fade than my barber gave me last week. He is going down there for real. But fuck Jerry. But anyway, I do have a hot take. I believe that P. Will is going to be the small forward of the future and that we should go after Jaren Jackson Jr. Why? Because we obviously need size, right? And I don't know how the contract and everything is going to work, but somebody from the big three is going to leave. I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Vooch. It could be DeMar. It could be Levine. But one of them is not going to be here because we obviously do not work as a unit. I love them as people. We do not work as a team on the court. And certain people's skill sets just interfere with other people's skill sets. It makes them have to play positions that they don't play. And, I think you said this yesterday, or somebody said this yesterday on Locked On. You got to subtract in order to add. And that really stuck with me because it was like, damn, I remember those baby Bulls when I was like 6. I'm young. I was young when that was happening. And I was like, how can we actually get better as a team? Like, Derrick Rose was a rookie. We made it to the playoffs. We bought the Celtics to 7 games or 6 games. I can't remember. It was that long ago. And it was great. But that's who I can see that we go out there in the offseason. Because we need a defensive anchor on the defense. And I love P. Will. I really do. He doesn't have that experience, though. And he's not known as a rim protector, even though he can guard the shit out the rim. But he's slow as hell in lateral quickness. He's slow. But he's a great defensive player. But I don't think he can be a defensive anchor like Jaren Jackson. But yeah, let me know what you think. I just think we need somebody like that. Not him per se. I would love him per se, but we definitely need somebody like that.
All right, not liking Jerry Reinsdorf. First of all, shout out to you being a young Bulls fan, and I really don't mean that as ageism or any type of negativity, bro. Me and Pat talked about it over on Locked On Bulls, I think, just on Friday's episode, that the Derrick Rose era is the height of some Bulls fans' fandom, depending on the age. That is almost their dynasty era in a way, and I love those Bulls fans, right? My son is in that era. My son's 17 years old. He is in that. His first years really taking in basketball were the Derrick Rose years. So, it's wild. And you say Jerry Reinsdorf. I think as Bulls fans, we all understand the issues of Jerry Reinsdorf. I think, kind of the outside people or people who are die easy Chicago Bulls fans who don't really follow the day in and day out may not understand just how bad Jerry has been for this team at times. But for your hot take, P. Will is the small forward of the future, and the Bulls should go after Jared Jackson Jr. Here's what I'll say. Every team should go after Jared Jackson Jr. Everyone. Every single team. Everybody, every team needs a Jared Jackson Jr. type player, period. But while I would say this, I'd almost rather see Jared Jackson Jr. at the 5 if he were ever to be a Bull. But guess what? The Memphis Grizzlies are never letting Jared Jackson Jr. go, at least not in the immediate future. That team would have to fizzle out and burn out so much for them to try to move on. He is part of their core. He is a young player they drafted. Jared Jackson Jr. is going to be a Grizzly for a long, long time. Now, as far as P. Will at the small forward, you guys know how I feel. P. Will can absolutely be a power forward in this league. You said it. He's not really the rim protector that we need next to Vooch. Now, if you get a different rim protector that can stretch the floor, like I think of Jared Jackson Jr., P. Will could play fine next to. It really kind of is the makeup of this team. But ultimately, I even see the way that I see it, I think AK envisions Patrick Williams as a long-term 4. And because of that, that's kind of where when you look at Dalen Terry, Dalen's not going to be the 2 with Zach LaVine in the contract here. Dalen Terry's probably going to be the long-term 3 for the Chicago Bulls. So maybe I'm reading those tea leaves wrong and incorrectly, but I do think that they have Patrick Williams factored in as the four long term here. And I really don't think it matters. Like, to me, his lateral quickness, his slow shot release becomes more of an issue at the 3 than it does at the 4. But either way, no matter what position Patrick Williams plays, if he doesn't learn how to be aggressive, he doesn't uncover some dog in him, it's all for naught. It doesn't matter what position he's going to play because he's going to be passive at any one of the positions. Now, also, to Big O's first voicemail, I do think that Patrick Williams, regardless of where he plays, his long-term potential and probably best asset would be playing point forward for whatever position he's in. And I hope that Billy Donovan eventually does go to P. Will more with that, and I hope that P. Will responds to that by playing well so that Billy Donovan goes to it even more. That's ultimately what I hope for P. Will. You guys can let me know what you think on everything down below. All right, last voicemail for today. This one's from Jamal.
What's up, Hayes? It's your boy Jamal back again. I got 3 minutes, so let's get into it. So, voicemail number 2. In this one, I'm going to really go through 3 players, Dalen Terry, Patrick Beverly, and Andre Drummond. Starting off with the one I know that's probably going to be back. I have about 99%, surety that he's going to be back. Dalen Terry's coming back, and I think he's going to start off at least trying to get some minutes and crack some minutes rotation. Now, we all know Billy is the type of guy that if you don't play well, you can lose your spot really quickly. So he's going to have to keep earning his minutes. It's kind of almost being like being on probation. He's going to continue to have to earn those minutes and things like that. It's not going to be a guarantee, but I pretty much see him coming back. Patrick Beverly ain't coming back, in my opinion. I don't really see him coming back. I like for him to come back, but the biggest issue with Patrick Beverly is he wants his bag. And like J. Cole said, I love to see a black man get paid, but it ain't happening on this team, not for what he's asking for. I'm sorry, that's my family doing what they do. But I don't see him coming back asking for the money that he wants. He's probably going to go somewhere else and get the bag, so I can't get mad at that. The third person, Andre Drummond, that's going to be the interesting one. Andre has been a player that at times looked really, really good for us, and it's like when you see him play, you're like, oh yeah, he's a beast. He still can give you a double-double really quickly and affect the game. And then there are other times when he just makes like really boneheaded plays, and it's like, yeah, that's why you never became that dude, or was like the second coming of, Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, whatever you want to think of him as, and things like that. Because as a rebounder, he's a monster, but there's something about him. The biggest thing about Andre is I give it a 50-50 because it's not like his contract says that he has a player option or a team option, if I'm correct, looking at it. So there's a good chance, so he can come back. I am on the phone. Go. So he can come back and things like that. But I think it's going to be interesting that if he doesn't, I would assume he'd be traded. And what do you do to replace him? Because you're going to have to replace him not with a player that can only match his impact, but also who probably will have to have a higher level of IQ than he does. So those are my 3 picks for this week. Let me know what you think. As always, see Bulls. See where they go, Bulls. Peace.
All right, so out of the 3 players that you mentioned, first off, Pat Bev not coming back because of that contract. You were spot on there. Andre Drummond actually does have a player option next season, so you're 50-50 on him coming back. I think is valid. It really just depends on what he wants as far as money. I don't think him opting out means he won't come back to the Chicago Bulls. Him opting out may mean he wants more money, maybe a 2+1, maybe a couple of more years on the deal for a little bit more security as he goes into his age 30 season. That may mean that with Andre Drummond. Now, as far as Dalen Terry, cracking the rotation, that is the biggest question, one of the bigger questions of this offseason for the Bulls, is because how do you see Dalen Terry cracking this rotation? When you look at Dalen Terry and his impact that he had in the G League, when things were going through him, the big men, Marko Simonovic played better. Carlik Jones played better when most of the ball handling was being done by Dalen Terry, right? If Kobe White does move into that starting lineup, does that then free up some things for Dalen Terry to have more things go through him off that bench unit? Does Patrick Williams, is he back in the starting lineup? Or is he on the bench? There's so many questions around it, but I do think that Dalen Terry, Dalen Terry needs to crack that rotation next season. But he needs to do it by earning and continually earning those minutes. But I do think they're going to start off at least with a plan of Dalen Terry playing a role on this team. I think that part of his development plan was being down in the G League. We can have our issues with that or not, but I do think that was the case. But it's up to Dalen Terry to own his own development. I want to see, and the difference with Dalen and Pat, for example, is that Dalen he's going to shoot regardless, right? He's going to play regardless. And if he makes mistakes, he's going to take his bumps. He's going to take the scolding from the players and maybe the coach, but he's going to use that and adapt that and try to come out better. If you watch the G League games last season with the Windy City Bulls, if you haven't, I suggest going and watching from the beginning to the end of Dalen Terry. You will see a player that learned something every single game, that week in and week out added something to his game every single week, right? And that was great to see. And especially while we don't have Bulls basketball, I would really implore you guys, go and check out some of those Windy City Bulls games from Dalen Terry last season, because you'll see he got it. And it's just if he's going to continue and maintain that confidence, if he starts having those issues and errors on the NBA level, and if the coaching staff allows him to go through his mistakes so that he can be a better player coming out of it. Let me know what you guys think on that as well down below. But that is it. That is my time for today on today's Mailbag episode. Thank you so much for everyone who got voicemails in. We'll tell you guys how you can get them in here in a second. Make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our Mailbag episodes going down again tomorrow on Sunday, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. We also have a bonus episode dropping today with the guys from El Sampler Pod, so make sure you guys check that out and be tuned in for that. But like I like to end every episode on, love you guys. Go Bulls. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.